Hello folks and welcome. So I have a video that was requested. The requester wanted to know how you can monitor several SSH machines on their local network. You can certainly think about this also for the internet, but is there a piece of software that's already available for Debian 12 KDE Plasma? The answer is yes. What's built into Konsole is a tool like this. I'm running top on 3 machines. The bottom segment down here is the local machine, and this plugin is called SSH Manager. And I'm going to be talking about that. I'll be running remote commands, rebooting machines remotely, updating software, and just generally showing you about SSH and the magic you can do with it on your local network. SSH is secure shell. It's an encrypted channel that you can also use for your file manager to do SFTP, secure file transfer protocol. But generally we can also use that to monitor computers like I'm doing right now. And we can also run commands, including rebooting machines or even updating software for that matter. And then toward the latter part of the video, if you repurpose computers, I will be talking about the security certificates and how you can possibly just erase those and put them back in case you repurpose a computer. Let's say you take let's say a Fedora computer that's running OpenSSH server and it's registered on this system and you want to clear out the security certificate, that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm also going to use Grommet. It's a highlighting tool, and I'll use this quite a bit. But Debian is known for stable systems. Debian is well respected in the industry with Linux, and a lot of systems, Linux systems, are Debian based. You'll also hear the words, well, they don't use the latest software. There's a reason for that. Stable software versus living on the edge, hopefully you get the difference. That's one of the reasons I respect Debian software, because they're stable systems. And that's all I'm going to say on that. You can see my hardware info. I'm going to remove the red stuff and say, welcome folks, filming in 1080. I think at 125%. The subscription logo should be in the corner. Well over 500 videos. Well over 500 videos on all kinds of things, including firewalls. If you need to find out some information on that, you may want to just do a check. All my videos are keyword indexed. All right, so generally this tool is now sitting at the bottom, and I have 4 screens or 4 boxes that I'm monitoring. One is the local, which is empty. But generally your tool that is called KRunner on this Plasma desktop, type in Konsole is the first thing that pops up, and you hit enter. I just highlighted this with the color scheme of oxygen instead of default, and then I added the new window tool. That's all I did for this box. But today I'm going to talk about your SSH Manager, which should already be available to you. You just need to plug in the servers. So these are all running OpenSSH server. They're all Linux systems. They're not all Debian though, but they're Debian based. But more importantly, they're all Linux. And I'll talk about adding this extra, and you can put up 16 machines if you like. So the user that sent me this request wanted to know, what is a cheap tool to use to monitor those machines? Well, you can use the plugin in Konsole for that, instead of going purchasing software or downloading something off the, what I call the wild, wild west of the internet. All right, so in either case, I'll also talk a little bit about, briefly, SFTP. Let me turn off the hidden, because I can also do that on remote machines. And you can see the word SFTP, Secure File Transfer Protocol. All right, so that's kind of connected to SSH, Secure Shell. So we use Secure Shell for a lot of things, and I do too. And more importantly, let's see how this is done. Using 4 boxes, I basically did it this way. Let me just open up a fresh one. So we have split view, which does 2 boxes. We have top bottom, and this one's kind of an oddball. It says load new tab with layout 2x2. It actually makes 4 boxes. And that's the one I'm using on the bottom screen. That's minimized currently. So I will close that and reopen this. So top is running on 4 machines, and let me define top for you if you're kind of new to terminal commands. Top is available on all Linux distros. It's generally installed automatically. To do what? Display Linux processes, to monitor things. That's why we use top. Top also has options. And I can also generally shut down a local program that's assigned to the current user rather easily, actually using top with a kill command. But I'm not going to get into that today. So that's what top is used for, is to monitor computers. You use Q to get out if you're using man pages. I will run top on the local machine. How do I know what's what? I'm going to use grommet for this. So I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. You can see the X's in the corners. And I will use, again, grommet, the highlighting tool for this. So this one here says Bob with the ending IP address at 236. The person that requested this video was asking about the local network SSH. We can also think about this later for internet SSH, but this is local network. Tman on 116, those are usernames. This is the local machine. It has a tilde in front of it. And this one is Sam on 238. Do you know how to read a top box for the most part? If not, you generally have the actual name of the task, and then I'm going to use the time over here on the local machine because it's more reflective of what the clock is matching up. 12:02 and 49 seconds in this case. But I will now remove some of the red stuff. So we have tasks that are all different on all the screens because these are 4 machines. Just to give you that example. All right, I'm using the highlighter so you know where I'm traveling around the screen. Hopefully you can see this, and hopefully you're not watching this on this 4-inch iPhones or Android phone screens. I recommend large screens if you're going to watch videos like this, because I'm running this directly off the desktop. So we're trying to monitor computers here. Okay, removing some of the red stuff. We can also look at information using the bottom pane here of SAM. We can also see how much RAM this machine has in MIB format. So that translates into 16 gigabytes. So it's 15873 and change. This one is 32 gigabytes because this is our local machine. Just happens to have 32 gigs on it. This other remote machine here for Bob is running 8 gigs of RAM. And then over here, Tman on 116 is also 8 gigs of RAM, just to give you some of the highlights. So the top process that this local machine is running, you can see Simple Screen Recorder is consuming all of my resources, because that's what I'm doing to record this video with. So top is used for a lot of things, and I will remove the red stuff and start clicking around to stop top. Local machine, I will hit Q. This over here, I'll use Control C. That's another way to stop it. And Q, and Q. Then I'll clear the screens, so it's not so, quote, busy. The other thing we can do is look at the history buffers on all of these machines, including the local one. So I'm going to type in the word history, and you can see it's using Bourne Again Shell. So generally, not all Linux distros use bash, but a lot of them do. I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to paste that command and hit enter. And then click over here and paste and hit enter. And the last one. And enter. So there's 151 line codes on Debian 88, 502 on MX99, 350 on the local machine, and 255 on the Debian 44. What can we do with these codes? Now, it records silly stuff too. So I threw those in there just to have a little fun. Now, these are line entries. Generally, for the local machine, I'll let you see where the file's being stored. So if you do know how to display hidden files in your file manager, Dolphin. If not, it's Control H. It's generally standard for all modern Linux file managers. /_ is born again shell history. That's where these are coming from, because this is frank with our local machine. Now, over here, you'll see line 491 has a long string of things. The sudo update and the end sudo apt full upgrade is just a shortcut for me not typing in 2 lines. This computer here does not have a keyboard, mouse, or monitor. It just has a power cord currently. I generally don't plug that in unless absolutely necessary. I actually have 2 of these machines that do that. But in either case, you can also see a reboot command here. So I'm going to perform a 491 on MX99. But before I do that though, what kind of machine is this? We use INXI for that, or I do, and I'll do this remotely. INXI is installed on that system, but it's not installed generally on your Debian system. So let me define that for you on this bottom screen, what that is first. I'll use man pages. So if INXI is installed, you should be able to get man pages on it. If not, install it. INXI is a command line information system. It has a whole host of options. All by its lonesome, if I put in INXI even on this top machine here, it just produces a couple of line entries. If I add the word -G on it, that's graphic information. Graphic card, graphics, whatever. This one here with the big FXC is going to give me full information and strip out personal information. One thing that you'll notice though, there's no X in this string, but this command does work. And I use it quite frequently, as a matter of fact. So this is MX Linux, or Linux MX, however you want to look at it. 23.6 is their latest, and this is an XFCE. But it's based off of Debian. But it does not use the systemd init in it. It uses that one. So let me run a INXI on this system Debian 44, and it's installed on all of these machines. As an FYI, you need to install that usually on Debian. But this over here is systemd. This not so much, but they're still all Linux machines. So what I'm going to do though is punch up clear on MX99 and do the history thing. And instead of me typing in a whole bunch of codes, I'll use line numbers to perform an update, which in this case is sudo apt update. And then if there is something, it'll produce an and sudo apt full -upgrade all in one shot instead of 2-line codes. And then we're going to do a reboot. All right, so I'm going to use the explanation point. And which screen am I on? If you can't see this, I'm over here. I don't think I need to put the red stuff on, but explanation point is usually shift and the number 1 on your numerics on the upper row of your keyboard, and then you can punch in the line number. In this case, 491. As long as this worked one time. Keep in mind, I sometimes have bogus things that I mistype in here too, but this one does work, 491. And it's going to connect to the repositories or repos as soon as I punch in the password, because now it just punched in all that stuff in for me, which is a shortcut. Now I'm doing this remotely. It's going to Debian because it's Debian based. It's also going over to the MX repos and looking at stuff. You can see LAMX repo right there. And looks like nothing was added, but I'll still do a reboot. I'll do it manually. Sudo, because tman is part of the super user do group, and reboot, and the system is now down and it's rebooting. So we're going to go over to Debian 44 and reboot that machine. Now, generally, Debian systems do not take your standard user and automatically put them in the sudoers group or sudoers file. In other words, they can't perform sudo, super user do stuff. Boy, that's a mouthful. In either case, I'm working on the first pane of the window here, if you can't see that. And again, if you're watching this on those 4-inch iPhones and Androids, please use a bigger screen. All right, sudo reboot is my command. It's going to ask for Bob's password because that's our current logged in user. It accepted the password just fine. I'm using Gromit now, but there's a problem because Bob is not in our sudoers file because that's standard security with Debian. So in this case, am I sunk? Can I not reboot this machine while logged into? No, you just have to be logged in as a different user. So in my case, I will use a root command, which is su. And I'll need to log into that su, super user or root user. And you can see it says root Debian 44 on it, not to be used lightly. This system is now going down. Now I'm going to go back over to here, and we can either use the plugin SSH Manager to re-log into the system, or we can do it manually. So I already have the username and the IP address, so let me just do it manually. SSH tman at IP address 192.168.1.116. These are also static addresses that I made on my router. And I think I messed up on the password while talking. Yes, I did. So I'm logged in there now, and I can issue an uptime code to let me see how long it's been up. It's been running for 2 minutes. That means I rebooted that 2 minutes ago. I can also run another top command, and it will reflect that on the top line. It says up for 2 minutes right across there. That's another thing that the top is good for. It can tell you immediately how long you've been up. In other words, the last time it was rebooted or turned on and off. Okay, we can do the same thing down here with SAM. Uptime is on that system is 2 hours 45 minutes. So you can see that on the bottom screen down here. All right, so this guy should have been updated already. Let's just go with Debian 44 using the plugin. And I'll need to click in the screen first. And we're doing Debian 44, this one. Okay, now it's logged in. Uptime is 1 minute. So that means it's live for one. Otherwise, if I couldn't log in, it didn't come back. But I'm, again, remotely rebooting these machines. This is not the local machine. This is the local machine. I certainly don't want to reboot that. It'll terminate my video. But I rebooted this one and also did a software update or check. And again, we're just checking this machine. Using the history buffer, I am just going to run some typical commands. So that one also I did a reboot at some point, which I'm not going to do. Well, actually, I just did this a couple seconds ago. But more importantly, I can look back in the history buffer and just run any of these commands. I'll do a 207, which is a PSP1. 207. Systemd. Process 1. All right, let me hit stop on this machine here, which is K. This is process 1, but this is INIT. Let me run top on this system. And I'll hit K to stop that for a second. And process ID is root systemd. That's what P1 is. So it's a quick command that I can just run on the system instead of running that. But generally top will tell you that right across there. But this, you know, when you're letting this thing run, I'm going to hit escape. and then hit the home key and let it scan again, the stuff jumps around on you when it's doing this because you're monitoring. So I'm going to hit Q, clear, and a df command. And I'm going to click in the top screen here, hit Q. Actually, first I need to escape out of that because I hit a K key on my top, which is a kill command. And more importantly, Q to quit, then clear. And then I'm going to run a df on that machine. So let me define what df is. On the bottom screen on this one, it's our local machine. Not that it matters much which one I do this with. And I will use Q to get out of man pages and type in another man command called df. And df is used to report file system space usage either on your local machine or remotes, providing you have SSH capability. And I will also run df on the top machine, but I'm going to first punch clear, not clear. Say, I recorded that also, clear. And then I'll run a df. All right, so in here, also df comes with some options, some favorite options. I'll use the red stuff, is the -H. That's a switch or an option. That's bad highlighting. Let me erase that. So -H is human readable, and it prints the powers of 1024. That's the calculation. The big H will calculate that in 1000. Okay, so over here, I'm going to type in df-H for human readable, and another one for df-big H. All right, since I'm using two different commands, the df by itself doesn't require an option, but it just gives you that in raw format, which is generally harder to read for most folks. It's still 2%. So this is an NVMe, and I'm looking at root because that's the primary operating system for Debian 44. It's on partition 2. Partition 1 is our boot partition. We don't really care about that, or I don't. But this is still 2%, this is still 2%, and this is still 2%. With the big H, the calculation is in 1000. So that becomes 2 terabyte. Size, used, and available. May be of interest to you. The small h is 1.8 T, 27 gigs, 1.7 terabytes available. It's still 2%. I will use and run an inxi command right now to let you see what the drive looks like. I'm still stripping out personal information when I'm doing that. So the drive itself is a Samsung SSD 990, 2 terabyte. But it also has a number on the side that says 1.82 TIB. Well, that represents this number at the top here, 1.8. So we're doing this df-H. This one is rounding it off to more of what our original is, which is reported in here also as a, let me find it again, which is reported as printed by the model number. This information comes off the drive itself. It's just stored in a software fashion that this machine can access. And I can do this to any one of these things. So that was df by itself. I'll just add the options also on this one. And we'll do the lower H also. So 1.8 T, 9% on that one. 2T, 9%. Original DF, also roughly 2 terabytes. I'll do an inxi on this system. And that drive is also a Samsung 990 Evo Plus. This one is not a Plus. If I were, let me look at that for a second. No, it doesn't have the designation of a Plus. And so this is the older version, and this is the newer version of the 990. These are very nice drives and very fast. I've clocked, I want to say on a primary NVMe socket, I clocked them at, I think, 7,000, somewhere in there. They're very, very fast. But in either case, we will move on. We are getting remote information. We are able to reboot. We are able to do software updates, providing if you're working with different Linux distributions, you may have to issue different commands, like maybe it's pacman instead of apt, you know, those kind of commands. But the basic commands that I'm showing you here are pretty universal. And I'm using 4 windows to monitor with. Closing all of them and getting rid of the red stuff because it just stays there until I clear it. Now you can also do windows, and my screen is 43 inches, so if you can think about it in this fashion, I can do it one of these because I put that key up there for a purpose. So that's probably too big, so let me make it a dinkier box. And we can still use the plugin. I'll make Debian 88 on the bottom, plug in the password. And I'm just going to run a top command so you can see it's doing something. And then I'll do the same over here on this one and use a different system. And I think you get the idea that basically you can have independent boxes to do this. I'll just leave this one here. And then when I click in here, these are the active screens if I needed to perform commands. So I will need to minimize these manually, but generally this is also what you have. You can actually see the names of the remote machines in that window. There's Tman, SAM, and local machine, if you wanted to do it that way. Different ways of doing these boxes. Close, close. It's just telling me that there's an active process running. That's why it's going ding. Do you repurpose computers very often? I'm going to talk about, actually let me do this beforehand. Yeah, I didn't explain how we create this. So let's do that first. So generally, my recommendation to you, since the user was asking me for their local network, is however many machines you're running SSH server on, is to go ahead and write them on a piece of paper and their IP addresses. Not all machines do name resolution. In other words, they translate. This one does, and to give you an idea, I don't recall if I added an additional software to do this with, but share 1, for instance, Control L will say mx99.local on it instead of the actual IP address like this SFTP does. But in either case, I would recommend just using IP addresses when you create these. And again, you can create as many as you want. So basically, you're going to start with the plus key. Now let me just dump this one out so you can see how this is done. All right, so I'm going to close that. So you can see there's only, I'm going to hit cancel. There's that one there. I'm going to remove it, delete, close, and reopen. So I wanted to add another SSH server machine. Open SSH server is available on most Linux distributions, if not all. SSH client is also installed by default on quite a few Linux distributions. But we're talking about machines running server, SSH server, secure shell. So we're going to hit the plus key. And basically you're going to put an identifier and your pet name for the system. And since we dumped out the one that said Debian 88 on it, we'll just call it a D8 for short. It's just a pet name. Now I do recommend IP addresses. So in this case, we're talking about local network here because that's what the user requested. 192.168.1 is a local network, and I need another number. So 238 on that one. These are static IP addresses, and they're registered on my router also as static, even though these are demo machines. Port 22 is generally what Secure Shell uses by default. If your 238 machine, for instance, as in my case, is running a firewall, then I need to make sure that port 22 is open for IP version 4 and 6. If you are running these on the internet, then whatever port numbers that you have that is non-standard, you plug in there. And of course your IP address on the internet. But I'm doing this on a local network. So a lot of people on the internet, though, use private and public keys instead of username and passwords. I'm not doing that on this system today. I have those kind of videos if you want to go look for them. But I'm using regular security certificates generated by OpenSSH server using passwords. But they still generate a security key, which is going to be stored right here in your home folder under .ssh for the machine right here in known hosts. So continuing on, I'm not using security keys, SSH keys. So again, that's just a reference point of where that folder is. But I am going to be using usernames. So in this case, D8 or Debian 88 has Sam as our local user on that system ending with IP 238. All you need is a pet name, IP address, port 22, check your firewalls if you use them on the local machine, this machine. And then this user is not the user on this system. This is the user on that system. Wanted to make that clear if you're learning. Now I have plugged that in and now we can log in. Keep in mind, I've already accepted the security certificate. So I just put in passwords. And you need to click that to make it active. The box was not white before I started. Because when you're typing in passwords, it doesn't show up. That's standard behavior of terminal. But I'm logged in now as that. What I'm going to do now, though, is talk about the ending part of this video, if you repurpose computers. What do I mean by repurposing a computer? A lot of folks run different Linux distros to have fun with them. So let's say I had Fedora running on a different system. I don't care what desktop it is. And you installed OpenSSH server on that machine and you registered it on this one. This file keeps tabs on these machines. You registered them there. There are 3 of these machines here. And you can probably guess which ones they are based off of what I've been playing with. 3 machines today. So they register these security keys for those systems. And if you decided to repurpose that one computer with a different Linux operating system, and then you install Secure Server there, and you're trying to log in from this system on it, it may still hold your old information. But how do you know what's what? That's the part that's hard to read in here because this is all cryptic. But you can recreate these. Did you know that? In case you have those kind of problems. This is a worst case scenario. So if you are repurposing, let's say D8, but these 2 didn't get repurposed, but you're having problems with that, it's hard to find the security certificate in there by just typing in the word Control F, D8. You may be able to find something that has D8 in it, but are you sure that this is that certificate? It might be, but it might not be either. You type in MX99 on there. Nothing found. But you know it's in here. I know it's in here because I have 3 machines based on these ED25519s. All right, without all that stuff said, let me just make it easier for you. I'm going to recreate these by dumping this stuff out. And that's, like I said, the worst thing. You can always make a copy of this file before you do what I just did. So basically what I'm saying is copy the known host and put it somewhere else as a temporary measure. So now this file is empty, absolutely empty. So as soon as I open this back up and relog into D8 or 99 or 44, it's going to ask me for a new security certificate that I'm accepting from that server and storing it in our local machine. So the ED25519, again, I'm not using public and private keys. But this is generally what you see on the first pass anyways. So you're going to accept that SSH 256, yes or no. If you type in a Y and hit enter, it'll complain. Please type yes or no. Yes, it is. Enter. Now it asks for Sam's password, because that's what we're doing here. Is it a good idea to use a blank password or password? Absolutely not. I don't care if you're doing that on a local network, but that's especially true if you're doing internet. Make that password something decent, but something you can remember also. All right, Debian 88 is now registered. I'll exit out of the command. And now from now on, when I do D8, it will just ask for a password. Now I'm going to close this briefly, because I still haven't registered the other two, and let you see what this file looks like. That's one security certificate. Yeah, this is how massive these things are, because they're all encrypted. All right, next, let's do the MX99. So, let me reopen this. All right. It's asking me for MX99 to accept the new security certificate. You know the drill. It's, of course, yes. And what's that guy's password? Password? Oh, that's a horrible joke. Exit. And then I'll register the last one. Again, I still need to type in the word yes first, then the password. Now these are ready to go. If I log in a different way also, you may have to accept that again. So if I use the word SSH instead of using SSH Manager, you may have to register that again. I'll show that example in a second. But now when I do it from here, sorry, let me first exit that because I'm already registered there. Now I can double click it and it's just a password. Okay, let me close that for a second. And now I'm going to let you see the security file. Now I'm going to do something that will throw you for a loop, maybe. Is instead of using the SSH Manager, we're going to manually log in. So if I type in, let's use Debian 88 because I will need to use the IP address to do this with. So that would be SSH, and I think it was Sam on that system, at 192.168.1.238. We're good to go on that one. Let's try Debian or MX99. But we're going to use, let me try using the actual name of the machine. .local. This is a different way. Ah, look at that. It's asking for a security certificate because I didn't use the IP address. That would be a yes. It's still T-Man's password. This is what I mean by throwing you for a loop for a second. I'm going to hit exit. Now I'm going to let you see what that looks like for that file right there. I now have 4 of these because I used the mx99.local instead of the IP address to register. So now I have an extra security certificate for 3 machines. I have security certificate for the same machine twice. Kind of different way of looking at it, isn't it? Yes, it is. Because I used MX99 local instead of the actual IP address, which was 116 ending. Come on, kind of think of it in a different fashion. So more importantly, you can use the SSH Manager. If you don't want to use that, log into these manually. Let me look at the history buffer here for a second. And let's use 256. Oh no, I'm sorry, 356. Explanation point 356. Enter. Password for Bob is. Now that's registered, and I can also bookmark that. Then the bookmarks end up down here. You can see Bob here, Sam here. So if I were to open this from fresh, let me close the window. Then you can also do it this way. It's a bookmark. That's all that is. Thanks for watching.